All right, everybody. I have my guest Kolo on the line, so let's go to our scene here. Kolo, welcome. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Been busy lately with a little bit of work. I've been doing a lot more trainings, and nutrition, but I'm good. I'm good. I kind of feel bad for not streaming as much as before, but I'm planning to get back to it as soon as I'm move to a different flat because that's also in the works. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing great, and I had a very specific reason to have you on today. It's very tactical because
Yes,
you played the shit out of Outriders in the demo, right? And
I'm
I'm
excited,
I'm
man.
very excited as well for the release. So I wanted to kind of hype up the game a bit for people here who are gonna be a part of the streams as well, and
Hmm.
maybe talk to them a little bit more into detail, like gameplay wise, because you're someone who can kind of you notice a lot of those details for gameplay stuff, and you've played a lot, so I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about Outriders. And then
Nice.
also on the nutrition stuff, you've explained a number of things to me, and I wanted to clarify a few things, not only to me but hopefully to the people in chat, because I think there are
Hmm.
many misconceptions with uh, mainly around the topic of like processed foods is what I wanted to cover. But then also like from there some tips, right, that people can kind of take on, some things to avoid and some things to look for when it comes to nutrition.
Oh
So
yeah.
before we dive into all of that, you mentioned you're kind of taking a step back from streaming. Are you do you have plans on kind of streaming next week? What's it looking like for you?
So I'm definitely planning to stream a little bit whenever I move, and I'm moving on basically the end of this month. So basically throughout the Easter holiday, that's going to be my plan to get some streams going then, and basically when the Outriders come out, that's when I'll start streaming again.
Yeah.
That, that's the plan, and I'm also planning to make it a lot more focused on what I'm good at, which is the nutrition part of it. Because so far, if you guys been a part of my stream, it's been like very casual. You guys can basically anybody can come in and ask me questions about nutrition. But this time I'm planning to have like focused streams on certain topics and yeah, just a relaxed, also just a relaxed atmosphere around nutrition and health.
So do you want to do like almost a PowerPoint presentation where like you
A
talk
little
about
bit.
it? Yeah, yeah.
So, like for the first half an hour, like for example, you do the talk show, and then you go on to play, play a game,
Yes.
which is like, for example, Demon's Souls this time. So for me, it would be I could be having somebody on who doesn't know much about nutrition. He asks me questions, and or it could be just like a presentation about some topic that I just felt was good to talk about, and then later we move on to grinding gear.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's get crack. Let's start on the nutrition thing, and then we'll
Yeah.
we'll go like a bit more, I guess, lighthearted on just on the gaming stuff, because
Hmm.
nutrition is something that everybody has a blog on what's the what's the next big thing for nutrition, or you
True.
gotta avoid this, you gotta do that. But one of the big things nowadays that seems to be, I guess, common knowledge or that most people accept is that you have to try to reduce the amount of processed foods in
Yeah.
your intake, right?
Yeah.
So, first off, start me off. I know you've explained this, but let's try to have it all in one place.
Hmm.
Why do we need to avoid processed foods? What is it about those foods that kind of mess up your system?
Um, so I came across the idea of processed foods whenever because as a kid I usually would have a lot of them because my mom would want to treat me well
Yes.
and basically give me some candy and stuff like that. Then later when I got into health, I found out that there's a close link between the development, you can say, of processed foods and like the obesity epidemic. And I think the number one thing that can really that these processed foods can really do is just pack on weight onto people, and then basically when the weight is packed on, there's much more chance for other diseases. So they themselves they don't most of them. Some of them do, but there are a couple standouts that are basically they are proven to, for example, give certain sorts of cancer. But other than that, they are mostly just like a secondary weapon in like a big scenario that makes, which would be the obesity.
So, because you talked about obesity, how much of that is just like, massive amounts of sugar in everything versus processed foods?
You know what? I think sugar will be fine. The massive amount of sugar. But what's actually even more worrying is the amount of different kind of and you don't really talk about this much because it's not processed into our brains into calories, because what's also in processed foods is something to keep them fresh. What the processed foods have over unprocessed foods is they don't go bad very quickly.
Right.
They have a long shelf life, as they say. And to keep that from happening, you have to keep away the bacteria from these foods. And when you basically you do that by adding certain like additives
Yeah.
and preservatives. And these are the things that up until I would say like 5 years ago, we expected them to not do much, just go through our body. But now we find out that they have a massive input into how our gut flora, the bacteria that are in our gut that help us process food, and basically give us all the nutrients and energies and
Right.
stuff like that.
So
When
sorry, sorry to cut you off, but before
yeah,
we go into the detail there, just to clarify, because I see Scylla asking if candy is processed food. What's your definition of a processed food, I guess? Because that term gets thrown around a lot, but what makes something a processed food?
so I usually go by the definition from the GI Society, is the Canadian Society of Intestinal Research.
Okay.
And they basically go by. Oh, wait, can I actually read it off? Because
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, feel
I,
free
I
to pull it up. No
I
worries.
can never
And by the way,
remember.
anything that we say today, if you want more information, you can message us in the Discord, and Kolo can help give sources to the stuff that he's talking about. Here, we won't
Yeah,
be able to get to all the references or maybe quote everything. So
exactly. Yeah, I want to be 100% fully transparent, and like all of the writing pieces and all of my work is based on like real life scenarios and real life
right.
studies. So if anybody's interested, I can provide the references in the Discord. But so here, for example, ultra processed foods are defined as formulations of several ingredients, which besides salt, sugars, oils, and fats, include foodstuffs substances not used in culinary preparation, in particular flavors, color sweeteners, emulsifiers, and other additives used to initiate sensorial qualities of unprocessed or minimally processed foods and their culinary preparation.
So
So
it's additives mostly.
yeah, so what makes an ultra processed food? So basically, you have the unprocessed, which is the healthiest. You have the processed, and then you have the ultra processed. So the ultra processed is the worst, and these basically, as we just discussed, those are the ones where you have additives which are not exactly for culinary preparation, but they make the food taste like something that is unprocessed or something that is very very tasty. And then the processed is usually just something that has been the original form has been changed, but these additives haven't been really added. So that's why I'm saying that some processed foods are fine, and we should be consuming them. But basically, what we should be staying away from are these ultra processed foods and some of the processed.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit now that we kind of know what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Talk to me about the effect, because you talk a lot
I
about
can
the
I can
the
also give examples, like for example, of
right. Yeah,
different.
sure, go for
So,
it.
for example, we all know unprocessed is like vegetables and fruits, dried fruit with like no added sugar, honey, or oil, grains and legumes, meat, poultry, fish, seafood, and eggs, milk with no added sugar, plain yogurt with no added sugar, nuts and seeds, spices and herbs, tea, coffee, water. Those are
Okay,
unprocessed. Those are the healthiest you can
gotcha.
you can say. Then you have the processed. There's also a group 2, which is for culinary ingredients, but I'm not going to go through that. Processed foods is, for example, canned fruit and vegetables and legumes, fruit in syrup, salted or sugared nuts and seeds, salted, cured, or smoked meats, canned fish, and artisanal breads and cheese.
Okay.
So this is the processed food, and then you have the ultra processed food. So here you have the a nice list of pop and fruit drinks, sweetened yogurt, sweet or savory packed snacks, which are, for example, cookies, candies and cake mixes, mass-produced packaged breads and buns, margarines and spreads, breakfast cereals with and energy bars, energy drinks, instant soup, sauces and noodles, poultry and fish nuggets, hot dogs, many ready to heat products,
Mm-hmm.
pre-prepared pies, pasta, and pizza dishes.
Okay. Yeah, good. So those are a lot of examples. I think that gives people a better idea of the different
Yeah.
groups that we're talking about. Ferrero ultra processed. Yeah,
Yes.
I guess any like candy
Mm-hmm.
in the form that we typically consume would be like ultra
Yeah.
processed. Try to avoid if you can.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, the ultra process you should be out. Usually, I say to my clients that you should be. We work our way up to removing them completely, but we want to make it so they eat them once a month or less.
Okay. So you can
And
have
then
like a cheat day
yeah,
where,
yeah.
right.
There's nothing wrong with like one day a month you basically going on a spree on like some sort of sweets or something like that. I don't that doesn't
Uh-huh.
really do anything.
So okay, so let's get into some of the effects because you talk a lot about like the biome of like your
The
intestinal
microbiome, yeah,
microbiome. Thank you.
yeah.
And I have no idea how that works, but I'm trying to understand the effect of eating something that's ultra processed. And I want to say
Mhm,
it in my own words, and then you
mhm,
can tell me if I understood it
mhm.
correctly, and you can give more structure
Yeah.
to it. But my understanding is something along the lines of uh, the processing done to the foods actually makes it so that it's very easy for your body to like take that in, and there's no like energy spent from your body to like to take that in some way, and that apparently is a healthy process in that not only do you get, I guess, less fat in your body from that food in some way because you're spending energy, but then also there are like byproducts from that process that apparently also help in some way or are healthy. So take that on and shoot it down if it's incorrect, or maybe add detail where you think it's necessary.
No, I think what you just said is correct, but needs a little bit more detail. So and I can add the detail in. So basically, um, I would say there are like two components that are mainly harmful and that basically cause different diseases, or for example, let's say mainly obesity. So as you said, when you process a food, you change its structure physically. So for example, let's say you have a grain that you would normally cook and you would eat, but you also can mill it, and basically it becomes something like a flour. And then out of the flour you'd make the bread because you used the and that's like the best case scenario, because then this will be like it will be a whole grain flour because you just milled the
Yeah.
grain. um, so that by itself is okay, but you already changed the structure of the fiber, because the fiber is bound to the carbohydrates in the grain. um, so it will be more bioavailable for your body, because that fiber is no longer attached to many of the carbohydrates, so your
Okay.
body can just easily lap them up. But when you would be eating just that cooked grain, for example, which obviously isn't very good, right? Like just
Yeah,
just
yeah.
just eating cooked grain, yeah, no. But if you'd be eating that, for example, like having some oats, which are decent, or some rices or stuff like that, then that you are eating like a fully like a whole meal, in the sense of you didn't mill it, or you didn't do anything to the physical structure, so all the fiber is still bound to to the carbohydrates and to the calories. And so basically your body has to work for the calories. So your body has to, obviously your mouth, when you chew, you do a little bit of the breaking down, but you can never go into like the molecular level. You can never go to like the level of, for example, like a blender that the
Yes.
blender can do.
Yeah.
So when it goes down the chute, you basically your body is then because it cannot digest fiber. Fiber just goes down to your intestines to feed the bacteria. So it needs to break away the molecules of fiber from something that it can actually use. And that itself takes calories, and also one of our receptors in our stomach is actually bound to the amount of fiber that we eat. So the more fiber that you have in your meals, the less hungry you are overall. So and it's like literally when you have a fiberful meal, which is like, obviously I'm not talking about supplemental fiber, but fiber in whole plants. You literally cannot overeat. You can't. You would like literally die out of from overeating if you just try to put more in. Like imagine having a full meal of like broccoli. How much broccoli can you eat in one sitting, right?
Right. Yeah. What's up, Citizens Leave? He's eating a pot noodle. Ha!
So that would be ultra processed, but hey.
Right.
But and then there's the second component, which is also very important, and that hasn't been talked about until recently, is the fact that all these additives that we are eating in the ultra processed, and I'm also myself to blame. I eat ultra processed sometimes as well. Like nobody's perfect,
Right.
but what happens is, as I said, you have to keep away the bacteria from to upkeep the shelf life. So basically, you add these additives, and then these additives go down the chute, and they go down to your intestines, and they do what they're meant to do in the food. So they keep away the bacteria. They basically kill some of the bacteria in your intestines, and basically your intestines is like an ecosystem. It's supposed to be working together. So for example, let's say some sort of fiber comes down the chute, one bacteria grabs it, and then he munches on it, and then he outputs something else like a byproduct, and then a different bacteria grabs that byproduct and munches it itself. So it's like a fully working like an ecosystem down there.
Right.
When you kill a certain species of bacteria, or you reduce their number, they are automatically replaced by other ones. And for example, when you eat processed, when you eat for example stuff like, again, sugar, oils, and stuff like that, the bacteria that tend to feed on those are the opportunistic and the kind of the pathogenic, I think they're called pathogenic bacteria. These are the not so good ones. So for example, there's that combination of, you kill the good bacteria with all these substances that they add to the ultra processed foods, and then you also have these sugars and oils that feed the bad bacteria, which then increase in population, and they do all sorts of stuff. Like they can break the intestinal wall, and they can cause stuff like IBS, which is the
Irritable
bowel
bowel.
syndrome.
Yeah.
Yes, SIBO, and all these different stuff like that. So that's the second component that hasn't been talked about up until very recently.
So is it true that, because this is how they market yogurt, right? That
Yes.
it helps and boosts your internal bacterial ecosystem. Is that a thing? So when if you get some natural yogurt, maybe you put a little honey on top to give some flavor. Is that something you would say, like, hey, it's gonna help your
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I personally wouldn't advise on putting lactose into our system, but if it's like the only thing that you can get somewhere where you live, I would say just go for it, because any fermented food can actually help you. And basically, getting yogurt is basically taking milk and adding cultures of bacteria to it. And these bacteria are good. They're the lactobacillus and some of the other ones that I don't remember now. But and these are the good bacteria.
Right.
And so basically, eating like an unprocessed natural yogurt is good for you.
Okay.
Um,
Gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
and you can also achieve that with, for example, like I might sound like a broken record here, but you might achieve the same thing or even healthier if when you go with like something like a coconut yogurt or a soy yogurt,
Uh-huh.
because then you're not getting the lactose and some of these products that are like soy based or just plant based in general. They don't have added sugar anyway. So
But I mean, as someone who does like lactose
hmm
products a lot, you're
hmm
kind of striking a nerve.
I
So
am.
I think a lot of us, including myself, we have the knee jerk reaction of like, don't take my lactose shit away,
I see
right?
what you mean. Yeah.
So what is it about lactose? Why are you saying, hey, try to avoid lactose in general?
So 66% of, I think, all people in the world are lactose intolerant. So more people than not. So if you take one person, the chances that he'll be lactose intolerant is much better than if that he won't be.
Okay, let's
Um,
assume for the purposes of this
uh-huh.
conversation that the the person is not lactose intolerant.
Lactose intolerant. In that,
Would it be
uh,
okay to?
yeah,
Yeah.
in that sense, then I wouldn't have anything against you
Okay. Okay.
consuming lactose.
So it's more to
Um,
do with how processed it is, right? If it's
yes,
like a highly
exactly.
processed lactose thing, then
Yeah,
it kind
I
of
was gonna
falls on
say
the
that.
same lines of what we're
Yeah, I was
talking
gonna
about.
say, for example, like if you choose to eat lactose, and obviously that's your choice, um, then going for like a natural yogurt or I think it's called like unfiltered butter or something like
Mhm.
that is better than going for some cheap butter or cheese in general.
Right.
I know we had many
Yeah,
conversations
the
about
cheese.
cheese.
Don't take away my cheese. Yeah, no,
The
I
cheese.
I understand. But so it is kind of what Scylla is saying in chat is the idea that, you want your body to work for the nutrients, right? And you
Exactly.
want that process to take place. It's the same reason why it's much better for you to, like, let's say, eat an orange as opposed to just drink a glass of orange juice,
Yeah.
because you're cutting the middle, man. You're
Mhm.
getting none of the fiber, really. I mean, there's some of it in the what do you call it, when you have the little bits, right, in the
And
juice.
like a smoothie,
Yeah,
would be like the best case scenario.
right.
Yeah.
You got some of it there, but the you're getting an insane amount of just the juice without the
Mhm.
actual, like, physical fiber thing that
Which
would
is sugar,
actually. Yeah,
hit,
it's an
which hits your
injection of
insulin.
sugar as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, in a time where we would have a shortage of food and we wouldn't have a lot of food, processed food would be a saving grace.
Right.
But in the current age, when we have literally like tons of food coming into these first world countries, I'm not talking about the world hunger. That's a
Yeah.
completely different thing that we can go into at some other point in the future. But when we look at the amount of food that comes into the first world countries now, um, it just makes zero sense to eat processed because we just don't need this, these calorically dense
Right.
um, food representing some things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. It's almost like it's coming in zipped.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I know exactly.
yeah.
It's actually quite funny because the original original processed food came out in about 1930s
Uh-huh.
or something along the lines of of the First World War, so 1918 and stuff like that. But when the obesity started to actually take place, well, the obesity epidemic is in 1970s, and that's only because only then we found out that we can add like additives to foods to actually preserve them and for them to not use a shelf life, and that's when they started to be mass produced. Obviously, for example, so a very nice example would be something like when you have a Twinkie. You ever had a Twinkie before?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when somebody would have to make the Twinkie themselves, they would be much less likely to actually make it and eat it than buy like a Twinkie for less than $1 right now. But since again they're available everywhere and they're cheap and everything, it's just very easy to grab them and just do it. So basically, these like mass production
Yeah.
factories, that's what's really killing us at the moment.
So talking about like a few things that people can look for to just feel a bit better or improve like their overall health in what they
Hmm.
eat. There's the idea of whole foods, right?
Hmm.
Another term that gets thrown around a lot. So
Yeah.
can we maybe define what makes something a whole food?
So a whole food is something that has not been touched or has been minimally touched
So
by the.
we would it would be in the camp of like non-processed or very lightly processed.
Yes, yeah, exactly,
Gotcha.
exactly. So, yeah, again, as we talked before, so this would be some like vegetables and fruits, dried fruit with like
Right.
no added sugar and so on and so forth. Um,
So
so
so the idea is if you buy let's say some pasta that says like whole pasta or like whole food pasta, whole
you should be careful.
meal,
Yeah, you should be careful. It should say whole grain pasta
whole
because
grain, okay.
yeah, currently, what the manufacturers can say is they can say whole pasta, and then it doesn't mean jack anything because they just said whole something. But once they say whole grain, then it means it has been made from a flour that's basically like a whole grain
Okay.
flour, which is just grain that's been milled. That's it.
Right. So especially for carbohydrates like pasta, it makes a big difference, right? If it is, let's say, whole actually like whole grain or something that's not just a simple
Indeed.
carbohydrate like ultra processed.
It
Um,
makes a lot of difference because as you even mentioned it, it's the bioavailability of the
right.
food. When you have something like massively processed and it's all just all carbohydrates, your body just takes it in and just soaks it up and
Yeah.
fills in its reserves of carbohydrates. But again, when you have this whole grain pasta, whole grain flour, there is some fiber still there, so your body has to do some
Right.
minimal works.
So I tried just to, I guess, talk about like a personal experience that I've had and just to showcase how a
Hmm.
small change can, make a big difference in how you
Yeah.
feel. I used to have, just your regular pasta and white rice, for example, and I switched to brown rice and whole grain pasta,
Hmm.
and the change was like immediately noticeable on the
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
Basically, instead of my system being shut down after the meal and feeling like I need a nap straight away,
Yeah.
I was able to keep going and I had
Hmm.
like a much more, let's say, regular energy release from the
Yeah.
meal. So that's just one example where a small shift in what you're eating can actually help you feel a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. Your body, it takes longer than to process well, to actually to digest that food, so it's released over a longer periods of time. If you
Hmm.
would eat like a bowl of white rice, it just goes into right into your system. But when it's brown rice, it has to get broken down further. So there's that regular and over time release of the
Right.
calories. That's why you don't get the crash at the end, right? If you would have
Exactly.
something
Yeah.
like sugar with water, right? Then you would basically drink it. You'd be like jittery, and then like you'd have a lot of energy in that one single moment, but then you would just crash down
Crash
like
hard.
shit.
Yeah.
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 So.
So one thing that I also wanted to ask about is this idea of inflammation. So one thing that people
Mhm.
talk about is that carbohydrates and sugar can lead to issues like inflammation. But what do
Yes.
people mean? I don't know if you're familiar with this, but what do they mean by inflammation? What is it actually?
So inflammation is just some sort of like a reaction in your body. I never heard that somebody said that sugar would cause like inflammation, but the basic, because mainly what causes inflammation would, for example, some like if, for example, you are allergic to something, then
Okay.
you would have inflammation because there's some sort of reaction. It's the C-reactive protein. That's basically how you find out your markers of inflammation, and it's basically this, your body is trying to fight something off.
Okay.
Um, So, for example, some people cannot, for example, have nuts like peanuts, right?
Right.
So when they eat, they get a lot of inflammation. They get like red skin. They get itching. There are different things. That's your body trying to fight that off, and because it's like it's not used to
So
being there.
just so I understand, like
Mhm.
inflammation, does it manifest itself as like your body literally kind of being swollen in some way, or like your skin, as you say, like having some kind of irritation?
Yeah, there are multiple ways it can show itself. So as you said, it's like the skin irritation. It's swelling of the of the skin of the limbs. It could be something along the lines of even just your even you having a lot of gas, or you having like a lot of bloating, stuff like that. That's also a reaction.
Okay.
um, when we talk about inflammation, for example, working out is also inflammation because you break down your muscle fibers.
Hmm.
And when you work out, you break up the muscle fibers, and you induce like this controlled, you can say, inflammation to your body. So your body has to go in there and fix them up, and hopefully make them stronger for the next time you work out.
Gotcha. Spaniard, what's up, man? Good to see you.
Sup, man?
What's up? So, are there any other like I guess suggestions or tips that you would give to people to like small tweaks, like we talked about, the brown rice or things, try to to trend more towards the unprocessed foods,
Yeah,
stuff like sausages. Is that because I know that's processed, but it's
that's 100%.
still like a meat, right? In some way. So, is
Yeah,
that
and we
like
actually talked about it,
how
right?
does that? I kind of asked you about it, yeah, but something like sausages, where would that fall in,
So sausages are pretty interesting and disgusting at the same time because um, like they fall into the ultra processed because they do have additives added to them. Not all of them. I'm not gonna say all of them, but
Right.
most of the cheaper ones and some of the mid range ones they do get additives, so they just taste better and they lay on the shelf for longer. So we have that going for them. That but processing, as I think I told you in private, that processing a protein doesn't do as much as processing a carbohydrate. It's like processing a protein doesn't make it some like more bioavailable to your body. But what's really bad, and why these sausages are considered to be I think it's like type 1 carcinogenic, is basically, or type 2, or I don't even remember anymore. But um, what do manufacturers do when they have an overload of a certain body part of an animal? So for example, let's say they have a chicken. They sold the breast, they sold the corpse, they sold the
You're not going to
the
spoil sausages for me, are you?
I am.
Ah, okay. Go on. I was ready for this.
So they take some of the good meat matter, but what they also do is to not produce too much waste, and not to waste money. They just throw in stuff like whole chicken legs into them. Like they obviously they're milled, and they're ground. I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
word,
Yeah.
into ground. Um, but that's why sometimes in these like in these higher end brands, which don't do a lot of grinding and they don't do a lot of like additives, sometimes people find like beaks of animals and stuff like that, like teeth, something like that. So um that's why they're not good for you, because they have matter which is not supposed to be ingested by our body. Like, we are not carnivores, we are omnivores. We can definitely live on clean meat, but it depends for how long. But we're not supposed to be eating this tissue that is not supposed to
Right.
be there.
Gotcha.
So basically, sausages are bad because they can hide what they put inside them. Like,
Got it. Yeah.
they don't show
They
you
can
exactly.
mash up a whole
Yeah,
bunch of shit and you wouldn't
yeah.
know
Obviously,
what's in.
obviously, I'm not saying every single manufacturer is like that, and there are manufacturers who are very truthful, and they only grind the meats, and
Right.
those are then
We're
healthier.
talking about an average pack of Frankfurters that you may pick
Exactly,
up. It's like, who knows what's in there?
exactly. It could be paws or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah. Well, I will need a break
Go
from
ahead.
sausages after this.
But you were asking about tips, what to do. So there are a few things of what I do with my clients. For example, as a first step is to try to get them to think about what they're eating. So I try to again cut out the processed foods. Like that's the number one thing that we do. Basically, I try to make them cook for themselves more, so they actually somehow appreciate the food more. There are very soft, you can say, soft connected stuff to food. So, for example, when you're eating, try to eat and not to do something else while you're doing it. Try to think about the flavors and the chewing.
Wait, so
And
you're saying I can't watch something while
I mean, you
eating?
can. I mean, you can,
I'm
but I'm
being
trying.
dramatic. It's just
Yeah,
because
I know.
I do it every time. So the thought of like actually just eating a meal without watching something is crazy.
I know exactly, right? And it was the same for me. But when I switched to having this like one meal a day, when I just sit down, I turn everything off, I mute my phone, and I just eat, and I just focus on flavors, and I focus on well, hopefully it's a good meal. But I focus on flavors, and I focus on chewing, and how my body feels, and when my body is full, I notice that I just feel like a lot better. Um,
Bro, that's like a meditative state you go into.
it
I don't
is.
think a lot of people can go there while eating.
No,
Say
like
so voice it in
yeah,
chat if people want to participate, we can do an
yeah,
empirical study. How many of you watch something while you eat? Are there
me.
any of you who actually just like, focus on your food while you eat? Because I agree with you. I think it can be very powerful to like actually appreciate the food and stuff.
Yeah, and like when you, for example, when you don't focus on the food, you just eat. You eat. You don't really connect with your body. You
Exactly.
don't really listen to your body. Your body says, "I'm full," and you're still eating because you're still
Yeah.
inside. Um, so yeah, that's the number one would be cut out process. Number two would be more of a mindful eater. Number three would be less caffeine, more water, because we do drink a lot of coffee as a
Yeah.
society. Coffee, tea. I think that, well, tea is better than coffee, but I would still prefer water over any of those. I do drink them myself. I do drink coffee and tea,
Right.
but so it's nothing terrible. But yeah, more water. Um, and then when I work with my clients, I go further, right? So I start to remove stuff like lactose, and I start to remove because also um, milk products, just dairy in general, has some protein that can actually be reactive to our protein in our body, so which actually causes the inflammation, as you said. Um, so I try to cut that away, and then the last part would be to cut out the saturated fats,
Hmm.
which would be in the meats and the cholesterol. Um, so that would be like a process for that I would go through with my clients.
Okay.
And yeah, there are also a few other things that I tell them that they can do, but they're obviously it's not part of my program. So, for example, mindful breathing. Breathing is also one very important. That's something I'm actually getting a course on at the moment
Nice.
to teach how to breathe more mindfully, and how to use techniques to get to wherever you want to be in your life.
Is that
Uh,
something like mindfulness meditation or
No, so meditation is completely different. So breathing is actually using your physical act of breathing
okay.
without much visualization. So, for example, there's the technique called Tumo, which, for example, was used by the monks in Shaolin, and they basically overbreathe their body for extended amounts of time, which induces again an inflammatory state to your body, but it's a controlled stress. So you control when it stops,
Yeah.
and when you it's kind of the same as with building muscle. Like you expose your muscles to some sort of like a damage and tension, they get repaired, and then they're ready for more. So that's
Is
kind of.
the idea, by the way, Chrissy, hi, and Rupu, it looks like people just vacuum their food while watching
Yeah,
something. So
yeah. I do the same.
No, but yeah, I was gonna ask, is it about like oxygenate, like hyper oxygenating your system in some way? Like you're breathing in, kind of like
Yeah,
heavy breathing to like
yeah.
bring
So
in a lot of oxygen?
you would inhale up to your full capacity of your lungs with through
Okay.
your nose, and then you would just you wouldn't breathe out. You would just let go through your mouth. So basically, you're not emptying your lungs before you take the next full breath, and you do that 30 times, 3 sets. So
Oh, so you don't
I,
let out the air? I'm now trying to do it. So you
yeah. So
breathe
for
in,
example,
right? You're
yeah, right.
full,
Yeah. So let's say we can do it. So I'm gonna breathe in the fully, and I'm just gonna let go, and then again.
right? But you do let the air out. It's just that you don't push it out
I don't
necessarily.
push. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I
got
just
it.
empty my lungs, and then at the end, there's a very nice part where you hold your breath for 2 minutes, because
Okay.
you indulge in oxygen, and your body is like goes into very alkaline state.
Wait, did you say you hold your breath for 2 minutes?
Yes.
I would die. I've
I mean,
never.
yeah,
What?
at the beginning, you only do it for a minute and a half, but
Okay.
the idea is that you supplied so much oxygen to your system through overbreathing that your body isn't going to need you breathing in for
Okay.
1, 2, or up to even 5 minutes.
And does it matter where you feel like you're holding the air? Because Kevin mentions
Mhm.
diaphragmatic breathing. That's something I've done for practicing singing, right? Because when you want to like get some strength in the diaphragm, let's say, when you're doing the breathing, are you thinking like you're holding the air up here or like down here in the diaphragm? Does that matter, or
I don't necessarily.
that's
I
not a
just
part of the exercise?
yeah and actually what Spaniard said is actually quite true, because I've learned a lot from the
Yeah.
Wim Hof.
So Wim Hof has,
Yeah.
it's a crazy dude.
He's a crazy motherfucker, but his techniques really do work and really do heal some people. I'm not saying it's for everybody, and definitely consult your doctor before, but
Mhm.
um and like I do a lot of the stuff that he does. But and actually the inspiration to become this instructor for breathing,
Yeah.
for mindful breathing, has come from him. So as we were saying, coming back to the full breath, I don't focus on any part of my body to fill it up with air. I just
Yeah.
go up until I cannot, basically up until I'm full in all the areas.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in my belly,
Yeah.
in my diaphragm, in my lungs. Um, and the last part that I would probably suggest is also ties into the Wim Hof, which will be like just exposure to elements, cold.
So literally going outside and like braving like some kind of storm or something.
Dude, it's interesting. It's interesting because I'm currently dating, and it's cold in Poland. Um, and when I go on dates, I'm usually just, and it's like it's between -5 to 5, so it's pretty damn cold.
Yeah.
And I'm usually in a t-shirt and just a very very thin, like a long sleeve, and everybody else is like in like coats and layers of sweaters and
That's a
stuff like that.
power move. You show up with like very little clothing and you're like, I'm
And
good.
I do this. Ugh.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's get boosted. Um, so yeah, yeah, that basically you start with, for example, like just standing under with cold showers for 30 seconds. You start with that, and then you work your way up to 1 minute,
But
and then
you're talking past the sale. What does that do for you? Sell
what does
me
that
on it.
do for me? So in general, what does it do for you? It's improves your blood, how your body transports the blood. So your body has thousands thousands of small muscles that are supposed to close off or open up your blood vessels. So for example, when your core is in an emergency state, for example, it's very cold outside, you don't have a coat, right? You start to feel tingling in your arms and legs, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you start to get cold in your arms and legs, right? And that's basically your body working to close off um, these these uh, blood vessels in your extremities, so your limbs, for example, to keep the temperature of the core up high. Um, since we and that would be like the perfect scenario, but what we do now is we put ourselves into clothes, and the clothes basically don't allow any of that to happen. So when you don't use a muscle, you lose it, or it becomes very weak. So for example, when these muscles are very weak, because they also have a function of pushing the blood through and not only closing off, um, your your mm, your heart has to do all the work, has to do all the pumping. So obviously the heart is always the main pump of your blood. But so for example, I have an anecdote of myself. When I started doing the exposure to cold, I reduced my resting heartbeat by, I think, like 20 beats. And I was already pretty healthy because I was already working out and I was already doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But basically, because you now trained all these little muscles to close off and and work and push this blood through, now your heart doesn't have to do as much of the work. So it's just further prevention of, for example, something like heart disease and
So
of
just
hypertension.
improving your circulation overall,
Indeed.
and yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
So as you see, it comes out to much more than just nutrition.
Yes.
But nutrition, I would say, is like the 60% of everything, and
Uh-huh.
then on top of that, you would have the exposure to cold, the breathing, the mindful eating, the exercise. Obviously, is also good for you. Um, but
Yeah. Well, listen, I encourage people to find Kolo on Twitch if you want to ask him more questions, because
yeah,
he's
yeah.
always doing this kind of open AMA. So if you want to stop in
Ask
and ask
anything. Like,
questions,
I
and
can be in the middle of playing some Little Nightmares or Outriders, grinding, and you'll be like, you know what? What should I eat to prevent X? And I'll be like, okay, here's a list, and I will talk to you about it. That's how it works.
yeah, so you can find his link there in the chat, and also
Thank
in
you.
the show notes if you're listening after the fact in the podcast. But and also in our Discord if you just want to have some more back and forth, feel
Yeah,
free. But I
I'm there.
wanted to, because I think we've given some very good applicable tips to
Yeah,
real people
I
that
hope so.
aren't committed to an Ironman regime or anything, like
Yeah.
real things people can kind of
Mhm.
try to apply. But from there, let's go to fun and games, and I want to talk about
Yes,
Outriders. So,
finally.
like I knew it was gonna take us a while, so I wanted to do the nutrition stuff first. So, Outriders, give me your, I guess, rate your excitement for it from like 0 to 10 going into the game release.
Oh, do up to 11.
Up to 11. So that's a solid 7 out of 7 Corridos for people who use the Corrido scale. Um, so,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
tell me a little bit about your experience with the demo, because you played a ton of it.
I played the 30 hours of demo. So yeah, so for context, there's if you just want to try it out, there's between 2 to 5 hours of gameplay
Yeah,
waiting for you. I played 30
yeah.
because I was grinding for materials and gear, and I was already in that loop of a gameplay. So the game, from my experience, is not perfect, but it has some very very interesting points. Like, for example, the itemization, which comes usually the itemization in games like looter shooters is usually in late game, right? Like Destiny, your guns don't fucking matter until like your max power level or
Hmm.
whatever. Then you want to find out. Then you want to find these what are they called? Not legendaries. Fucking these good guns, right? That they have like special
Right.
powers.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
then you want to find those and you want to upgrade them to the maximum power level,
Hmm.
light level rather. In here, yeah, thank you so much, Scylla. It's called
Exotics.
exotics, yeah.
Yeah.
But here, as soon as you jump into the game, as soon as you hit that level 2, level 2, level 3, you find guns which change your playstyle, and you find also armor which works with your skills. And you
Huh.
can, as a pyro, you can find a gun which, for example, just randomly sometimes shoots ash, which if you guys don't know, ash is basically how you immobilize enemies. So pyro is not really good close range, but when you can freeze people with ash, well, freeze, you can stop them with ash at a distance, you can make some things happen. So that's been really, really cool with the game, where the itemization comes in very early. The skills are very satisfying to use. I would say some of the animations are junky, but that's kind of expected from a demo. I would say they can definitely work on that for a patch or something, or for the full release. We will see. But they're very satisfying to use. The only character that I didn't really connect with was the techno.
How dare you?
How dare you!
I
I knew it.
represent the techno
I
bros,
know.
and I am outraged.
I knew that you and Coretta would be mad at me, and you're like, "We're not gonna play with this bull."
No, it's okay. I will extend an olive branch.
Yes, Scylla. Yes, Devastator for the win. So yeah, my main class is the Devastator. I don't know. I've always
So talk
loved.
to people a little bit. What is the Devastator? What's like the main characteristics of the class?
So the Devastator is like the tank of Outriders.
Okay.
He has special abilities that make him less vulnerable to damage. He has like this big shield that he just pumps out, and he catches all the bullets, and then he can like spray them back out at the enemies. And he's all about manipulating the earth. He can throw out spikes, which like impale people, and all sorts of cool stuff. And your gear enhances your skills further.
Okay.
So for example, rather than impaling one person or dealing or for example, you can impale more. Or for example, like I had this build going that I could slap the ground twice. He has this like called some sort of like a ground slam or something like that. He slams, and in front of him like there's that big kind of like earthquake effect going.
Yeah.
So I had a gear which added a second charge, so I could use it twice in a row. And then I also had another piece of gear which, for every enemy hit, gave me additional armor. And then I also had additional one other piece of gear that basically added damage for the amount of enemies I was hitting. So you can see how all these
It
how
all
this
plays
yeah
together.
it all plays together, and it's like super fun in that sense. Even though I didn't find any legendaries in the demo, it was still I think a worthwhile
Mm-hmm.
fun for me, because I was just experiencing what they have coming
So
with the
maybe let's do a quick rundown of the other
yeah.
classes. I guess since you so casually crapped on the Technomancer class, let's go to the Technomancer, which is kind of focused on around gadgets and
Yeah.
longer distance. Let's probably mostly snipers.
Snipers,
Is
exactly.
kind of your sniper class, maybe some utility, some support. So why the dig on Technomancers?
You know what? It's nothing against the Technomancer. It's just how the game is supposed to be played. As in,
Okay.
like the developers even stated that you're supposed to be in the face of enemies, and you're supposed to be using all their like special healing abilities to stay in a fight. Like
Mm-hmm.
this game is not supposed to be like this behind the cover. And even though Technomancer isn't like it's not like a definition of staying behind cover. It's like the one that is most likely to stay behind cover, because obviously you have all this equipment, and and you are more likely to be the sniper
Uh-huh.
at the back of a team fight. So which just isn't that fun for me. I just prefer a different play style. It's not
I
bad.
get that, but I think that that's not the only play style. For example, the way I
Oh yeah.
played was all around freezing people, and when I'd freeze them from a distance, right? Just
Mhm.
toss a grenade and then headshot them, and I would do this outside of cover, just kind of moving all the time, right? You just go in to aim quickly, and then you keep moving. And I think if you do it like that, you can enjoy it a lot more. I agree. If you're just like sitting behind a box and like shooting gallery,
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, I think it would suck. But the AI is also likely to get
Yeah,
you
it's
out
dope.
of cover,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think you can actually just sit there and camp.
I think it's going to be possible when you're playing with a party because you might have some
Oh,
like
yeah.
Devastator and
Yeah,
for
I could
example like
see that.
a
Yeah.
Pyromancer, and then you would be like a third as a techno, just kind of
Okay.
supporting from the back. I'm curious to see what are the support abilities for
Right.
techno because whenever I played pro esports, which was like Heroes of the Storm and a little bit of League of Legends, I usually went for supports. So that kind of speaks to me. I wonder what they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So another class we have is Trickster.
Yeah.
That's my number two. I absolutely like him because he just jumps around the battlefield. He's a sneaky ninja that basically jumps behind people. He can slash them up. He basically messes with time. He has this super overpowered ability. I don't know why the fuck it's in the game. He stops time in this bubble, and bullets cannot fly through, and everybody's super slow besides him, and it's nuts. It's insane. So Trickster's. Have you played any Trickster?
No, but do your allies move normally in the bubble?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
your allies and everything, but yeah, enemy bullets, enemy projectiles, and enemies are just slowed, and they're like, whoa, yeah, that kind of stuff.
Johnny's face when you said League. No, no, you're reading too much into it. I accept League players as well. Okay.
I used to play League. I don't play
God
League
damn
anymore.
it.
I'm a recovering addict. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a recovering Dota 2 addict, so
Yeah.
yeah. But okay, so then the fourth class is
The
Pyro. So
Pyro.
give
Yeah.
us your thoughts there on the Pyro.
Pyro, I would say is like for me at least is like the most standard class. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
middleman. It's between the Technomancer and the Devastator. Basically, you deal damage um at mid range mostly with your abilities. He has some cool ones, like for example, I'm not sure what it was called, but it was like some sort of like living bomb where you apply a burn bomb to somebody, and if they die while burning, they will just explode and deal a lot of damage, and it does a very very cool crunch action.
Mm.
um so yeah, um I think for me it would be like a class that's going to be cool to jump into after I max out Devastator and Trickster, just to keep it fresh.
Yeah, are there any skills that go beyond just like tossing fire at enemies? Is there like some depth to the skills, or is it a bit more just like you're in their face and like
So
procking
there
fire
is,
everywhere?
yeah, I think that was the gist of what we have in the demo. Keep in
Okay,
mind that we're gonna have 4 more skills when the game comes out.
got it.
uh, 4, yeah, 4, because we got 4 and there's 4 more coming. So what's cool about it is that there is some synergy. So basically when somebody's already burning, you can throw in like some special ability to, if somebody's already burning, they're going to take like additional amount of damage and they're going to be like slowed for a little bit. So there is some synergy going between those, but yeah, it's kind of like this middleman class, kind of like like a go-to class for everybody who's like new to the game, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's a good rundown of all the classes.
Hmm.
How did the shooting feel for you? Because for me, as someone who played the shit out of Division 2,
Hmm.
that was kind of my measuring bar that I was comparing against.
Okay.
So my opinion is that the shooting felt a little bit less tight, less, like solid
Hmm.
gameplay wise. But there's a lot more in the game that interests me. For example, the story in Division 2 was
Yeah.
utterly forgettable for me.
Hmm.
Did you play Division 2? By
No,
the way?
no, I
Okay.
didn't get a chance.
But the story in this one seems quite interesting. There's some cool
Mm.
sci-fi beats. You have like some interesting characters that maybe you care about. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, so I think there's quite a bit there to fill the gaps, and
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting game. The only thing that worries me a little bit that I saw in the demo was the way the enemies behave sometimes
Hmm.
is idiotic. So sometimes an enemy will come for you and they're like trying to shoo you out of cover, for example. But they, at the last moment, instead of just shooting you when they're up there, they turn around and go for someone else in the
Hmm.
team. So
Yeah.
like the way they switch aggro seems entirely random and makes no sense, right? You're going
Yeah,
for
indeed.
someone behind cover to flush them out of cover, and when you get there, oh, you turn to shoot at someone who's completely in a different position. So
Yeah.
there are some issues there with AI, but I want to get your take. Did you run into them, or do you think that's something they can kind of patch up before the release?
100%. I think it's something that they can definitely patch up, as you said, before the release. But it depends if that feedback got through to them.
Right.
I'm not sure if it did, because I think they did make a post of like known issues, and I don't think that was on there. Um, it's mainly a problem when you're playing co-op, which is gonna be most of the time in that game,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It
right?
only hurts when you breathe. Type deal.
Your knee hurts. Don't fucking walk,
Yeah.
bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that I didn't experience it much because when I was grinding, nobody was such a no life like myself. So
Right.
so I was doing it solo, but so I didn't really notice it. But yes, when I was playing with a bunch of guys from the Discord, yes, I did notice that sometimes the enemies would just like shooting at you, and then obviously somebody would like shoot it. It was kind of weird because it was a little bit realistic, because from a different direction, for example, Curator will be shooting at him and he will turn around to shoot Curator. So sometimes it made sense, but sometimes it was like, yeah, this guy was just like turning to shoot at me and the Curator, for example. um One thing I would say is that I didn't notice it as much because the in the late game of demo, the enemies perished so fucking quickly that I killed the boss within like 2 seconds. So
Right.
for
Yeah.
me, like it wasn't like a big deal at the end, but like you know what I mean.
Yeah. 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 I do. Yeah.
Like
So, go on.
yeah, like but when you get into the full game, and especially like into the end game expeditions, I would expect that the enemies will be much more tanky, much more challenging, and then it's gonna become a bigger of an issue,
Yeah, I think they nailed the release time frame for this game
right?
because
I
there
know.
is very little else that's coming out that kind of competes in this space. Let's put aside, I talked about this yesterday, but let's put aside Monster Hunter Rise because that
Hmm.
Switch, that's an entirely different group of people.
It's on the
There,
PC later on, right?
so yeah, exactly
Mm.
next year,
Yes, sure,
but
okay.
there is precious little else on that's like coming out now, and I think that if Outriders comes out and it works, things aren't, let's say, broken, because online games
Hmm.
sometimes have issues. Let's assume that it's a smooth release. I think it
Yeah,
could really blow up in a
yeah.
similar way to what like Valheim did. A very different game, but just the idea that it becomes really popular because it kind of comes at the right time, and if it, let's quote unquote, just works, as Todd says, I can see this kind of really popping off. But for you, what's like the time longevity of this game? Do you view it being something you're going to be playing like for 1 month, or maybe longer than that? How do you think
It
about that?
I would say it really depends, because also developers said that depending on the interest around the game, they might do more. They might do DLCs and they might
Okay.
do expansions, just because it's a breath of fresh air and it's not a fucking live service like every other game
Right.
like that. One thing I do want to mention is that I'm super impressed by the just um, like their clarity when it comes to communication with their customers. Like they released a demo a month before, which lost them, I would say, a lot of pre-orders, but also gained those pre-orders, some of the other pre-orders. And they are also releasing on Xbox Game Pass, and so all these like pro consumer moves that are literally unheard of from like a AAA, because I think it's considered AAA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, from a AAA developer, that I just I'm just blown away by, and even that clarity of a release, um, that already speaks to me, and I want to support that.
I agree. I like seeing that even a game like Godfall, which, well,
We
didn't
talked
quite,
about, right?
we talked plenty about it. It didn't quite land on many aspects, but at least it was, like a complete game day one, let's say. And what was there is what the devs meant to deliver. You know, and it was like a complete package. Let's say in terms of it wasn't like piecemeal as many of these games. You know, they come out as a shell of the game and then they flesh it out over time. So I respect that a great deal. It's one of the things as well for me.
Just to answer your question, I would say this I'm expecting this game to take me 3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
Okay.
3 months, and then basically we'll see where the game is.
Mhm.
I would say within the first week, I'm gonna be max level on Devastator, like easily.
Yeah, I even took an extra day off because so this comes out on the 1st of April.
First
and
of April.
So I took off the 1st of April, and here we also have holidays on the 2nd and the 5th. So the long weekend, we're gonna all be balling
Dude,
in the gym.
Yeah, I'm gonna be hopefully moved already, so I'll be bowling.
That would be perfect, yeah. And so again, people look for streams from Kolo as well, and hopefully we'll do some co-op streams.
Yeah.
That'll be a lot of fun, so people can see the different points of view and stuff.
And like when we're not streaming, we're usually just hanging out in the Discord, and you're like,
exactly. So
you pop a message, "Hey, Kolo, you boosted monkey, get on here and
yeah, and we're gonna have a channel in the Discord. So if you're looking for people to play with or watch other people play, that will also be the place. But Kolo, before I let you go, do you have any other thoughts on Outriders that you wanted to kind of talk about, or anything we didn't get
to? No, besides the point that I really challenge anybody to put themselves out of their comfort zone and try to really play this game with somebody, be it somebody random or be it a stranger that you met online or something like that that's going to be playing this game. I would say that it's going to be a little deep. Watch out. You know, in the current situation when it has been more than a year of a pandemic, let's say, you know, we are at the point where a lot of the social interactions are not there, and we are missing the interaction with people, even when somebody doesn't feel like they're missing interaction, they are you just jailed Scylla.
I just sent Scylla to jail. It's
yes,
fine.
exactly. Sorry about that, but yeah, as I was saying, just to recover some of those interactions with other human beings and having fun and smiling together. Obviously, not every interaction is cool, and if they're not cool, kick them in the ass and just move on. Yeah, so just do your best to play this with somebody, or maybe you won't be getting this game, but for example, you're playing Valheim. Go ahead and try to find some people on Reddit or even on Discord of Johnny's Discord. There are people who play Valheim on a regular basis. Any game, unless something single player.
Yeah, I agree. I think this game really pops in multiplayer. It's one of those, like, you kind of have to, playing the Division single player was also, you could do it, but why would you? It's like having Italian food without Parmesan cheese on top. And I know you're gonna shit on me because of the cheese, but listen, dude, you gotta. Okay, look, it is how it is. Well, listen, life options. We all know.
Yeah.
That it's maybe not the healthiest thing, but sometimes you gotta allow yourself some little treats here and there.
I agree with that.
All right, but listen, Kolo, thanks so much for your time, man. Today, I think we really touched on a lot of useful stuff for people on the nutrition part. So I encourage people to try out some of those tips, man, because for me, like, some of those had a real impact.
Great. That's good to hear. And I hope that, if we helped even one person or gave them some sort of inspiration, then I think that's job well done.
Fuck yeah, man. It's a beautiful message to leave it on. Kolo, stay well, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
I appreciate you having me on. Thanks
See
so much.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.